So, is college actually worth it? And in my opinion, it completely depends on the person because not everybody is book smart and not everybody is built for school. So, to answer the question, is college actually worth it? My answer would be yes and no because some people may benefit from it and some people may not. So, if you're somebody who is graduating high school or someone who simply doesn't know if college is the right path, watch this video and I'll share and explain my perspective as someone who is a college graduate. If you're book smart and are truly passionate about becoming like a doctor, lawyer, dentist, surgeon, or any other high paying career path that requires like a decade of school, then college and university are amazing options for you and are 100% worth it because these are high paying jobs that will never get replaced by AI and that will always be needed to keep the world functioning. But if you're somebody like me who literally hated school since like 8 years old, can't memorize information unless you're truly interested or fascinated by it, someone who has a high risk tolerance and willing to take any risk necessary, and someone who has an obsession and a burning desire to achieve something specific. If this sounds like you, then college is 100% a waste of time, a waste of money, and not worth it for you. So you're probably wondering why I went to college. And that's simple. My parents' dream was always for me to get a higher education and to be the first new generation in my family with one, or they would kick me out of their house. So I made the logical decision to go to college, suck it up for a couple years, and to make my parents proud. But my goals, dreams, and ambitions never disappeared or changed during those times. They only grew stronger. So now that you know the only reason I went to college, now I'm actually going to explain why I hated college. So now let's bring it back to 2020. I was 18 years old and in my last semester of high school. This was when COVID hit and I started to change my life for the better. Because before that, I was heading down the wrong path. I was hanging around with the wrong people, had horrible habits, I was doing things I wasn't supposed to do, and just getting into a lot of trouble. But when the lockdowns hit, it was much easier for me to distance myself from that type of crowd, and it was also a time for me to reflect on my life choices and to find myself again, which I did by replacing bad habits with good ones and overcoming addiction. And I started by training calisthenics every day, meditating, journaling, and being on NoFap. From then on, I was obsessed with self-improvement and calisthenics, and I knew that this was my calling in life. And my old dream of being a YouTuber came back, and that's when I fell in love with content creation. So after arguing back and forth with my parents, they agreed to let me take a 1 year gap after high school, which I was truly grateful for. And I didn't take this for granted. So from early 2020 to late 2021, about 18 months before I started college, I was working out every single day. I was on a 1 year streak on NoFap, and I made my first 100K at 19. During this time, I felt like I was on top of the world and like my life was heading somewhere until I started college. Then everything I was working towards started to collapse. I was never book smart, but my first year of college was actually surprisingly good until I got put on academic probation and I started to feel the pressure. And because of this, I started to fall back into bad habits. I broke my 400 plus day NoFap streak and I started to be depressed and just felt stuck. So now that you know a little bit more about me and my backstory, now let's get back on topic. The only useful things that school teaches you is to be on time, memorization, and applying that to a specific task, which are tests and exams. That's the textbook definition of how 9 to 5 jobs are designed, and that's the only thing that school prepares you for. Everything else is completely fucking useless and irrelevant in the real world. And this is the biggest flaw of the school system and how it's failing us. Most of us finish high school with no real life skills. And I'm talking about basic shit like how to build a perfect credit score, how a mortgage works, what a LLC is, what a tax write-off is, and I can go on and on and on. Like how the fuck is a parabola gonna help us solve our life problems? Like it's fucking ridiculous. The school system is literally outdated. Yeah, the curriculums change and they added onto it over the years, but the structure and how the school system was originally designed hasn't been changed since the late 1800s to early 1900s based on the research that I did. That's well over 100 years, and times have changed tremendously since then, and now it's starting to show. My parents immigrated into this country when they were 17 and 19 years old in the late 1980s and the early 1990s. When our parents grew up, the technology we have nowadays didn't exist, and going to school and working a job is all they knew and were taught. And during those times, you could literally work a minimum wage job and be able to buy a house and take care of a family. Just because this worked for our parents' generation doesn't mean it will work for ours. Times have changed and we have to learn how to adapt. The one thing that college taught me is that it's damn near impossible to find a decent paying job after you graduate. I applied to over 1,000 jobs and only got 2 positions, which I didn't work for very long because the pay was way too low. The average rent in my city is $3,000 a month, so making only $2,000 a month working a full-time job is absolutely fucking horrible. I was making a lot more money when I was 18 and 19 years old, which basically solidified my opinions that I had about school my entire life.